Hello and welcome back to the show. My name's Relevant. This is Do All the Things. And on today's episode, another YBA1 Mod 1 Mod. Mod 1 Mod. Mod 1 a Mod 2, because I've already modded it. Yeah. Now, if you've been following the comedy, on a previous episode, I've already modded this amp. It's my buddy's amp. The Traynor YBA1 Mod 1 is actually a really cool amp, like a really cool amp. You basically get your JTM45 with a push-pull potable one-wire mod. Used to be, you'd pull this and it would do the one-wire mod. The only problem is Traynor kind of screwed it up. You see, the one-wire mod includes a master volume, which this amp didn't have, and that's what I did here. So we sacrificed the two inputs, and now when you pull this, or actually not when you pull this knob is actually a master volume now. So you could have one channel of JTM45 or have your one wire, and the amp sounds really good now. With a master volume, oh, it's so awesome. You can still crank it and get that effect, or you can turn it down. And I know what you're thinking, oh, they put a phase inverter master volume on it. That's your master volume. Yeah, I know, but it's not the same. You have an extra stage of gain, an extra stage of clipping with that phase inverter, and it's a sloppier gain. It's great for that cranked amp tone if you want to turn it up, but if you're going for lower volumes and you're using something like an overdrive, you need to have that master volume. Now, one catch is you pull it to go to 45 mode. When it's in, it's stock one-wire mod, because that's mostly how Buddy uses it. So anyway, today we are going to sort out the other thing about this amp that sucks, and that is the tube sockets. Has this ever happened to you? Oh, I'd sure like to try these more different tubes in here. Oh, what the frick, bud? These are 20 watt 5881 type tubes. They're more than qualified to go into this amp, but I can't fit them because the bass is too big. Or maybe you want something a little bit more hardcore just for whatever effect you're going for. It's like, oh, KT88 6550. Oh, that's so hopping, sir. You know, this amp's designed to run EL34, so it's got enough heater current for a hardcore tube like this, but it just didn't fit. It's just like, yeah, no. Well, today we're fixing to see if we can extend those tube sockets in some way, shape, or form. Now, I'm hoping to figure out how to do that with maybe some of these extended tube sockets. They got longer leads. Now, truth be told, I had this idea for Buddy before I was looking at the amp. Now that I'm looking at it, it's got different kinds of tube sockets. They kind of solder around the circumference. How I'm gonna make this fit, I'm not 100% sure. Now, you could probably just piggyback these guys like that. That would be silly, but it would work. But we are going to try to figure out how to make these tube sockets protrude from the chassis like they're supposed to. Hey, we should be able to disconnect on these things. We should take some photos first. You know, always prepare your photographs. Slow camera needs to boot up. All right, let's rip all this out here. Oh, of course, these ones are hardwired because of a previous repair done. Not by me, even though I did do some work on that. That's going to throw us a little bit of a curveball. Actually, that's quite annoying, actually. I'd prefer if that wasn't a thing that existed. Let's get this out of here and see what we have to work with. So, I was kind of assuming I was going to have those ceramic sockets. This is a slightly different design, and I guess I see the appeal. Surely it makes it easier for them, but it's, how do we extend those? We just piggyback them? Is that what we're going to do? Should we drill holes in the bottom? Well, I'm going to start off by dismounting these sockets. Well, we got it mostly unsoldered. Just have to work it out now. It's going to be tricky. It's impossible to remove all the solder off something like this. At least with my tooling. This thing is a stiff enigma. Ah, you f***ing sucker. Oh boy, that was not a fun experience. Took forever to remove this friggin' thing. If something has multi-pins on a PCB, it's often a bad time, especially through hole. So now the question is, if I say plop one of these guys into said hole, what kind of clearance are we looking at here? Oh, this pupper cub's right up pretty much flush. Not a lot of clearance at all. So if we do want to solder a new socket, pretty much these contacts are going to have to fold over to this side. And then the socket's going to have no support, which means we have to drill holes and bolt it down somehow. Now, it is possible that we can sandwich these together, right? So these pins will fit into these pins, like that. they're gonna be all the way up there. Like, can you see the perspective here? Can you see as it show up on camera? Like the bottom of the socket base here, just, you know, it won't even go under the board. That's how tight it is. So these pins will get cut very short. Now you could maybe go and drill holes. Like those pinholes, they go right through. There's no metal on the back of them. So if you drilled some holes through them, you could get these pins here to poke all the way through and then probably size it up. How you'd solder them together though after. Now will these little flats go in those holes? They will. It's not necessarily the way we want them to. Starting to get ideas. We need to research something real quick. Oh, I had to get the most worn out screw in inventory, eh? So if we do this, we're gonna need to be able to bolt these sockets down somehow. We're not going to be able to connect them to that board. They're gonna have no support or suspension. So the question on my mind is, how can I make it so that this nut, which is gonna be barely accessible once I install these things, how can I make it stay put? So I have a little bit of an idea here. It involves me getting it really hot, assuming my torch is up for the task. Yeah, it does appear indeed I can solder a nut to these bases. It is a process that's gonna take a while because I need that screw back. Let's give us some cryogenic treatment. Oh! I just ruined my solder. It was still very molten. Everything's still so hot here. I can work it with the iron now though. That's a bit ugly. I'll do better next time. I got 3 more of these to do, right? I should find another screw. Fortunately for me, these standoffs I got are like zinc plated brass or something like that. I think that means I probably shouldn't inhale any fumes coming off of them. I'm not sure if this qualifies as welding though. You know, I have this torch almost exclusively so I can weld on chassis. Yeah, once that solder cools, careful to screw up the gain structure. It's real hot right now. I gotta give it a minute. All right, once it's cool, in theory, wonder how much torque we're gonna be able to apply to these. Is it gonna break off right now? Oh, look at that. This is a scrap tube, by the way. Don't feel sorry for it getting abused like this. I think that's one of the first EL34s I ever bought 20 years ago. Aha! And now our tube socket has threaded mounts. You know, you can solder things to things sometimes that aren't wires. It's kind of like welding. Not as good. I'm sure it'll be good enough to mount these guys up nice and solid. We just have to do that all over again. Now, electrical solder isn't necessarily ideal for this because of the amount of flux that it has in it. You need a bit more flux to do this kind of thing. So you find yourself having to put a bunch on, suck it off, put a bunch more on, just to get enough flux to etch it there. At the end of the day, you hopefully have some screws that are well enough held into place that we can bolt these guys on and off. So once that cools, we can, well, we're gonna have to drill some holes and stuff, get this mounted to the chassis, and then work from there. All right, so while you weren't paying attention, I got the other tube socket removed, and I don't know what was up with this guy, but as I was trying to bend the pin straight, several of them snapped off. So mentally prepare yourself for the idea that you're gonna maybe damage the original socket. That also means we're committing to this mod now. I have to get these new sockets to work. Now you want to be careful when you're taking them off because you don't want to damage the traces on the board. Indeed, I found that if I wasn't careful with my pressure, that would have happened. It's some areas where they're soldered, they kind of wanted to pull through. Now I went ahead and got one of the sockets mounted. And I guess I'm going to show you how to do that now. Note the index marking on the board says the keyhole has to be on that side. So that one's correct. So we just kind of plop that down. Because we're not lining up actual solder holes, we have room to breathe. We can kind of plop that in there. I want to get it as center as possible. And then with a smaller drill bit, I kind of put it through the hole. Because we're using longer standoffs to do this, it keeps that drill bit nice and straight. Then what we can do is we can spin it with our fingers, just like that, both sides while holding it in the correct place. If we look, there's going to be a tiny, tiny little score mark exactly where we need it. Now I have drill bits that got like quite the nice point on them. I wouldn't work with a blunt drill bit. I'm going to get that point into that hole and reinforce that score mark. Just finger spinning it. You'd be surprised, you can drill a hole with just your fingers. It takes a lot of patience, but now I know where my holes are going to be. Again, with a nice sharp drill bit so it doesn't walk that much. Let's send her home. Might be worth noting that the drill bit I used to do the score through the holes is not the one that I'm using to drill the hole. You need a bigger size so the screw will fit through. You know, if you're doing these kind of work, you know that already. Come on. All right, now we just chamfer and deburr these puppers. Now we can install the socket, yay! To do that, because I intentionally purchased 632 standoffs, it means it's compatible with these common 632 computer screws. You know, they have little locking ribs for her pleasure on it, so hopefully they stay in place rather nice. So now not only do we have extended tube sockets, oh, it's getting a bit pinched. That'll allow us to mount just about any tube we want. They're also chassis mounted. Yay. Will those retainers fit around a KT88? Like KT88s aren't exactly practical for this kind of an amp, but I know Buddy's gonna want to try them. But yeah, that looks good. That's gotta be tight tube retention there. Whoa. Might want to remove these things, which sucks because how tight the fit is here and now, you might actually have to loosen off the sockets to do that. So now one of the big questions is how we're gonna actually connect it to the board. Very difficultly, because those long ass pins won't let me seat the board back down, will it? Wow, that's an unforeseen circumstance. Oh, no. Just gotta use some finesse. Ah, tube sockets. Mounted. So in retrospect, if you're gonna do this mod, don't get these kinds of tube sockets. We thought, oh, PCB mounted sockets, let's just get other PCB mounted sockets. Honestly, the better solution would be to get a standard tube socket with the holes, mount it using this method, and then, you know, run jumper wires. Because I believe that bending these guys over to fit in those holes is going to be rather difficult. I guess we could try, kind of like, do one of these. And then, yeah, just getting our contortion in here. One of these. And then it's gonna need to twist at the end. Oh, you know what? Actually, I think it might work nicely. Hey, look at that. Yeah, we just need to do that 17 more times. Might need to get a little bit of an angle going on here though. Oh boy, that didn't bend the way I wanted it to. So the technique I'm finding is once I've bent it over the hole, I put the plier after the hole, bend down, come in with the twisty noses here and give it the twist. Then I should be able to get it into the hole. Actually, you know what? That's not that bad. With a little bit of technique, they bend right in there, and that's gonna save a heck of a lot of time than getting a conventional mounted tube socket. This is actually working out rather well. That looks pretty nice. Just need to flex on these a bit so that they point downwards like we want them to. Yeah, all right, let's give her on this side. Just gotta make sure you grab on the base so it doesn't bend, and then just push the pin down. All right, now I do believe we can start the solder process on this side of the board. In fact, we will probably, because those holes big enough, it'll wick through to the correct side. Oh, that one's pop, pop, pop. All right, they're all soldered. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna dismount these sockets so that I can pull the board and inspect the joints on the other side. Oh yeah, I'm gonna touch them up just to say, but she's gonna be good, bud. The primary contact pads are on this side, so you kind of want to make sure you got good fusion, right? There's a couple that aren't nicely poking through the hole, but I don't see why not. Their tolerances are pretty good. Yeah, we're done. Now we put this guy back together. Oh, let's refer to our pictures. I just have to chuck these, now we have to just chuck these 632s back in here. And there you have it. Now we can put whatever tubes we want in there, sir. And Buddy would like to try some Soviets in this. That was part of the plan. So let's get the tubes back and fire this up. You know, if you really want socket retainers, all you have to do is score a little notch so that they'll bayonet in. One of the biggest problems with this amp is if you look, this is another thing, like, okay, Traynor, if you ever do something like this again, time your damn tube sockets the same. This one's pointed that way, that one's pointed that way, that one's pointed that way. They're all different, and that kind of makes it hard to swap out your tubes by feel. It's one problem we were having when we were tube rolling this thing, getting the tubes back in. Or at least, you know, need to put some sort of braille index mark or something. I don't know. On here, a pair of roughly matched Soviet tubes. Hey, okay. Now the tube retainers are a little overstretched now because they have to go further. Me personally, I would just remove these all together unless, you know, you're gigging a lot, or you can get longer springs. Like, I rarely see tubes fall out on their own unless, you know, you're just one of those people who never maintains your amp and are completely oblivious and unaware to how it's behaving. Now I'll just go ahead and give it a brisk biasing. Oh. We got a problem. We're probably not going to be able to use Soviets in this one because we've run out of bias range. I need to bring these down to 30. Oh, okay, well that's not a big deal. Most tubes he has will work in here. Oh, I wonder if that'll be a problem for KTs. We might have to do further modding on this. Oh boy. Adjusting that bias range. Well, 35 is not too hot. It just means it's a problem if we crank this amp up. Those tubes are going to go into meltdown. But as it stands right now, we can plug in and testimify it on a bit. That's one wire mod, master volume modded. Hey, good shot. That's master volume modded in one wire mode, series mode. A lot of gain for this amp. Oh boy. It is an awesome amp, especially with these mods, and now we can put whatever damn tubes we want into it as long as they fit in the bias range. I guess we're gonna find out. I should explore on this thing a little bit further to see if I can tweak on that bias, because he may or may not want to use the Soviets in it. Now, this is a bright amp. He doesn't need any more brightness. He's most likely, the 6L6s he had in there work perfectly fine. He's got some KT77s he'd like to try. Let's pop those in right now, actually. Except these tube retainers are, ow, ow. Ta-da! The only KT77s on the market. Might have been JJ's excuse to release another kind of EL34. We had 6V6s in this thing, biased perfectly. Did the little low power trick where we set it to 4 ohms and plugged an 8 ohm cab in there. Worked rather well. You could do the old crank fast without it completely like blowing your face off. All right, what do we have for bias on this guy? Not lots. We'll go to 34 once we figure out what tube is hotter. 28. There, that's fine. All right, what's KT set? Oh, I still have the pick in the amp. In this amp, they sound way better than the Soviets. Wow, yeah, that's actually pretty nice. she's good to go now, bud. It's ironic that we did this whole mod and now we're just putting 77s in, which would have fit anyway. But at least now he can answer the question about the Soviets. They don't sound as good in this amp, but that's because it's a bright amp and those are bright tubes. This amp needs a warmer tube. Soviets sound great in a dark sounding amp, which this is not. But either way, now there's more options because he's gonna want to try KTs. He wants to try KTs in all his amps. Well, heck, there's an idea we had, and now for you out there in YBA Mod 1 world, if you want a Mod 1 mod for your mod, so you can mod your mod, well, you mod your mod, and you need a Mod 2 now, so you can fit different sockets in there. My whole dialogue just completely just broke down right there. The point I'm getting is now you know how to do this mod. If you want to do this mod, it might work on other amps that use this kind of socket, and then you can put whatever friggin' tubes you want in it. Small victory. But at any rate, I hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more. And I still have the most awkward outros. Now I know why people beg for likes and subscribes. It's because it gives them something to say at the end of their videos. Yeah.